Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Trollhunters Tales of Arcadia. Okay, so this episode, So I'm Dating Sorceress, well, essentially, Claire finds out she's being controlled by Morgana, and that's essentially what the main premise of the episode revolves around. Yeah, that's where the title comes in. Like, Morgana reveals herself to Claire in this episode. And after this has been building for the past several episodes now, where Claire has been feeling not quite right, and this kind of confirms why. Like, this has been building for a long time now. But in case, this episode opens up with Claire suddenly inexplicably feeling better. She's currently prancing around her room, cleaning up everything, and suddenly not Enrique comes in. And of course he just sits and watches the whole thing, and she eventually realizes he's there. And of course, but he does note that she seems to be feeling better, and also notes that he's curious if she went on any joy rides with her staff lately, which of course she points out she doesn't fully understand what he's talking about, and then he proceeds to pull out the staff, and it's revealed that it wasn't actually in her bag where she normally keeps it. And of course, Claire's confused. So then Enrique proceeds to explain that he figured out that his bear is actually a nanny cam, and also admits that he had to quote unquote erase a lot of footage, which implies that there were some things on there that he probably shouldn't have been seeing, being perfectly honest. But he openly admits he had to erase some things before showing Claire a video that he found out after discovering that he had been discovering that he had actually found out that his bear was a nanny cam by accident. And of course, what we find out is that Claire apparently had suddenly started floating exorcist style in her bedroom before just suddenly disappearing with her staff into the dead of night. And this of course causes Claire to become very much concerned, because she doesn't remember any of this. And of course she immediately panics, and in the process drops her staff under the bed, and of course she goes to go pick it up, discovers that all the councilwoman Nunez under her bed as well, and goes to take her staff before ultimately deciding against it and throwing it back under the bed because she's scared of what's happening to her, and immediately runs out of her bedroom and claiming she's late for school and that she needs to go. While Enrique is obviously very visibly concerned for his technically not sister. Of course, after Claire returns to school, she immediately greets Jim, and of course they're certainly trying to figure out Jim is currently trying to talk about what's going on with Claire and a bunch of other things. He also after Claire starts feeling better, she does insist that she tries to confess to Jim that she was the one who stole her mom's signs, which were supposed to protect the Gum-Gums, which would protect him against the Gum-Gums. But of course, before she can, Darci comes over and immediately pulls her into a hug, before realizing too late that Claire might still be sick. But Claire, of course, admits that she's fine and that Darci has full permission to hug. So she pulls her into a hug, and of course is happy that, of course, it points out that it was some cold and that it's definitely knocked her out. But of course, Claire is fine. She's very visibly okay. But of course, Darci then proceeds to point out that and of course Toby walks up as well, and after greeting everybody, they do proceed to come up with a brilliant idea, which is to go on a double date with Claire and Jim, since everybody's feeling better now. Which of course Jim is a little nervous, but he agrees. He admits that as long as Claire's up for it, he's more than happy to do it. And of course, Claire points out that yes, she'd be more than happy to go, since of course she's feeling better, or at least she thinks she is. But of course, once everybody's all set up for the date, they'll figure out all the details later. At which point Toby escorts Darci to class, while Jim kind of goes off on his own, because he also needs to get to class, and Claire isn't going to the same class as him. And Claire proceeds to go and open her locker, only to discover that Enrique had tailed her to school. And of course, like the concerned half-brother that he is, Don Enrique then tells her that he's actually making sure she's okay, because he notes that something is definitely off about her and he wants to make sure she's alright. But of course she insists that, of course, Claire just is insisting that she's fine, but also tells him to stay out of sight and slams the locker closed with him in it. So, he gets comically stuck in the door. But with that, she then proceeds to leave. Meanwhile, Jim meets with Toby in gym class, and Toby is a bit nervous, which is weird for Toby, because of course Toby is obviously nervous, hoping that the date will go well and that everything will go smoothly. And of course Jim doesn't know why Toby's so nervous, pointing out that that's not like he's been on he's been on plenty of dates with Darci. And of course Toby points out that yeah, he's not worried about himself and Darci. At which point he accidentally beans Pepperjack in the head with a basketball because he's only half paying attention while talking to Jim. It's a funny gag, and unfortunately Pepperjack just gets nailed in the head. Poor Eli. But of course he then proceeds to explain why he's actually nervous. That, as it turns out, he is nervous because it is, technically speaking, Jim's first date. Which of course Jim points out that that's preposterous, pointing out that he and Claire have been on plenty of dates before. But of course Toby points out that troll hunting missions don't count. And after Jim points out all the different dates that they did go on, having gone to Claire's house for her barbecue and having almost kissed on the cliff while doing with their little dance. Toby points out that both of those wound up devolving into troll hunting missions, regardless of what the initial intention was, and does point out that they have never actually gone on a troll hunt on an actual date. Like, it's always been troll hunting related stuff. And of course he also points out that especially since Darci is there, the three of them can't talk about troll hunting stuff, so Jim needs to talk about things that aren't troll related. So of course that causes Jim to immediately become nervous once he realizes that Toby is right. They've never gone on an actual date before. He then asks Toby for some advice, and Toby proceeds to outline his 3 rules to the perfect date. So this of course causes Jim to immediately regret his decision, but Toby proceeds to go on to explain the 3 rules. First and foremost is to make small talk with things that are in the environment. And he also gives Jim kind of an addendum to that rule, which is that no Spanish. As he points out, you shouldn't talk Spanish in the middle of Jim defaults to Spanish whenever he's nervous around Claire. So he does point out that if Jim buffs Spanish as a sign that the date, it probably isn't going well. But this of course causes Jim, and so Toby proceeds to grab 2 basketballs to kind of serve as stand-ins for himself and for Darci and Claire for them to quote-unquote practice on. And of course he proceeds to immediately gives one of the basketballs to Jim, and demonstrates the first point, which is how to make small talk. And of course he immediately is perfect at it, because he's been on a couple of dates at this point. He's more experienced with Jim in this area. So he compliments quote-unquote Darci perfectly, while Jim has no idea what he's doing. Like, it's very obvious that he makes a lot of ball puns, obviously, because he's not entirely sure what he's supposed to be doing, and also eventually defaults into Spanish, which Toby slaps him for, telling him no Spanish. But in any case, he gets into rule 2, which is to use movies to your advantage. Toby goes on to explain that he picked a horror movie specifically so that to use its power to kind of instigate cuddling, which of course does proceed to demonstrate that with his own basketball, while Jim kind of awkwardly follows in his footsteps. At which point he then proceeds to explain rule number 3, which is that the girls cannot go to the bathroom together, which of course causes Jim to become very confused. And of course, Toby explains that girls gossip in the bathroom. They don't actually go to the bathroom, they gossip. Which, and points out that if they ever go to the bathroom together, that's going to be a problem. That's a sign that the date isn't going well. Of course, Jim is obviously a little confused, but of course, Toby then proceeds to demonstrate that Once everything is, all three of those rules go smoothly, then the date should be a shoo-in. At which point he gives the basketball a kiss, and he gets yelled at by Coach Lawrence for kissing the equipment again. So yeah, it's a funny little gag. But in any case, also going into this next part is where we find out a little bit more about what's going on with Gunmar. And he was returned in this episode after going off on his own to go talk to Morgana at her lair. He then proceeds to, or rather, not really, but we'll get to that. Like, she's imprisoned somewhere, and that's established in this episode. But he goes on to explain that he has returned, and he now knows the key to causing the Eternal Night, the staff of Avalon, which of course he then proceeds to make a big play of pointing out that Dictatious as his loyal advisor, knowing full well that the Pale Lady quote unquote speaks through him. Should have seen this coming and should know exactly how to handle this. And of course, Dictatious does point out that yes, he does know about the staff of Avalon, and that it's Merlin's staff, and that it is most likely buried with him, and that's they will absolutely be able to use it to awaken the Eternal Night, and points out that he saw it in a dream, but that's at this point where Gunmar cuts him off, pointing out that he knows Dictatious is lying now, because he spoke with Morgana directly, and she pointed out that she has no idea what Dictatious is talking about. So, of course, he immediately calls Dictatious on his lies, and does point out that he's a deceiver, and of course, Dictatious immediately tries to plead with Gunmar, pointing out that they've been through a lot together, and points out that he's always been there by Gunmar's side as his most loyal servant, and that he can't just be dispatched that quickly. And of course, Gunmar points out that it was all in vain, pointing out that he should have thought of that before he betrayed him. At which point he summons his sword and is about to kill Dictatious. When Dictatious tries to plead with her Cerna, because they're kind of conspiring with each other, but she immediately turns on him and points out that and calls him a traitor. At which point Gunmar is about to kill Dictatious, but Arg, who has been undercover for the past several episodes now, he's been just undercover in Troll Market, pretending to be a Gum soldier. He immediately realizes that Dictatious is in danger, and understanding now what's going on, he immediately leaps into action and saves Dictatious. Much to Gunmar's confusion at first, because he has no idea why Arg is suddenly there. But of course, Arg tucks Dictatious under his arm and immediately tries to run out of Troll Market. Arg immediately goes into hiding and tries to flee. But Gunmar proceeds to assemble his forces, just sends them after Arg. But in any case, going back to the episode, it's at this point. Going back to the other part of this, it is at this point where they go on a date, and they currently sit down at this outdoor diner, and of course we do find out that yes, compared to Toby is a lot better at this than Jim is, because he obviously demonstrates the proper etiquette for going on a date, which is pulling your date's chair out, making sure they're tucked in against the table, before you seat yourself. While as Jim doesn't know how to do that. He struggles significantly with that. It's very much not second nature to him like it is with Toby. He's not great at it. But of course, ultimately they do wind up sitting down, and it's a French restaurant. So they immediately start talking about how it's going to have a lot of Parisian cuisine. And of course, Toby points out that it is in fact the city of love. Which of course causes Claire to continue the conversation. She points out that she's never been any further than Mexico to visit her family, while Jim immediately defaults to Spanish because it fits the conversation. This, of course, causes Toby to kick him, of course, but Jim immediately changes the subject, and his immediate reaction is, "Wow, I wonder how long these blinds and other things have been cleaned. They look kind of dirty," but which of course isn't particularly great small talk, but as they're about to order, Jim and Toby quickly discover, to their horror, that Dukesy is their waiter. And of course, he immediately starts talking to Claire about her interests. Like, and of course, the obvious problem is that Dukesy is this suave man their age with a British accent. Of course, Toby and Jim are extremely intimidated by him because he's better. But they immediately try to break off the conversation. Claire immediately talks with him about the battle of the bands, about how they took his advice and they're currently practicing and forming a cover band. And of course Dukesy is happy that everything is going well for her. And also notes that she looks like she's feeling a lot better, because last time he saw her, she wasn't feeling too great. But of course, right as they're about to order, Jim immediately breaks off the entire conversation and just be like, "We're gonna order steaks for everybody. That's what we're ordering for dinner. You don't need to be here, Dukesy." But and of course, Dukesy is a little upset that Jim is being very curt with him, but does proceed to go on and take everybody's orders. Obviously, he asks everybody how their steaks would like to be done. But as the conversation is continuing, Claire suddenly is very much out of it and suddenly not herself. And of course, when it's finally turn to order her steak, she insists that it should be raw, dripping with blood. And it's obviously not Claire at this point. She's very obviously not acting like herself. But of course, this causes Claire to immediately panic because she realizes that wasn't her talking, and immediately runs into the bathroom with Darci trying to follow after her. At which point Toby immediately hollers Rule 3 at Jim. Like, Rule 3. We need to worry about Rule 3. And of course, Jim immediately misunderstands what Toby's talking about and kicks him in the balls, which of course solves the problem of Darci and Claire going to the bathroom together. But because Darci comes back to make sure that her boyfriend is okay. But while Claire goes to the bathroom alone. And of course, Claire goes to the bathroom. She starts cleaning her face when suddenly her reflection stops moving with her. And she, of course, is very confused, at which point the reflection starts speaking. And of course, this causes Claire to immediately panic because she doesn't think what she's seeing is real. But it's this point where the reflection starts talking, and it's revealed that Morgana is talking through Claire's reflection. This is how she reveals herself to Claire. She starts talking through Claire's reflection, and honestly tells her that she's not some reflection that Claire can run away from. And at which point the reflections eventually, at which point Claire tries to escape the bathroom, but the bathroom just closes magically on its own. At which point Morgana does wind up revealing herself properly to Claire. And of course, she reveals herself as this shadowy figure in golden armor. But of course, Morgana immediately tells her that's who she is, about how her name is Morgana, and that she will need to, and that she's very happy that she found someone like Claire. This, of course, she eventually appears as an apparition. But she then proceeds to tell Claire that she's surprised that Claire has the mental strength to wield her staff and be her vessel, and also points out that if you punch a hole big enough, something's bound to escape. This of course causes Claire to realize that Morgana was the one responsible for stealing the signs and hiding them under Claire's bed. And of course, Morgana proceeds to point out that that Claire has already served her purpose and gave Gunmar everything he needs to know. But since they're here and since she's out and about, she figured she might as well use Claire to kill Jim, and when they get him alone. This, and of course, immediately proceeds to possess Claire in what is a pretty awesome sequence for a made for Netflix animated 3D series. But of course, Darci immediately runs in the bathroom to check on her friend, and is after making sure Toby's okay, and goes to check on her and make sure she's okay. And of course, we find out that Morgana is now in control of Claire and is controlling her body. And of course, Claire, it's very obvious that Claire's trying to fight back, because there are parts of her that are just moving on their own without Morgana's input. So it's clear that Claire's at least trying to fight back, but Morgana pretending to be Claire and doing her best to put on an accent put on a, an American accent as opposed to a usual English one. And proceeds to claim that she's never been better. She's just not feeling like herself tonight. But of course is obviously ominous. But Darci proceeds to return to the table once she's confirmed Claire's okay. At which point Nanarike runs into the bathroom and having seen the whole thing, tries to confront Morgana and insists to know what's going on. But of course Morgana immediately picks up Nanarike and tosses him into one of the stalls. And after knocking him out. At which point she proceeds to return to the table. And of course, Morgana in Claire's body proceeds to go do exactly what she's trying to do. She immediately sits down, and the first thing she does is try to stab Jim with a knife after he asks if she's okay. And of course, Morgana pretending to be Claire is obviously very visibly not super great at pretending to be Claire. Like, she's obviously very ominously weird. And of course, Jim does point out to Toby that, hey, Toby, Claire's not acting right. Do you think everything's okay with her? And of course, Toby's like, yeah, everything's fine. She's just flirting with you, which of course is not what's happening. Like, Toby is completely missing the mark. And of course, it's at this point where Dukesy returns with all of their food. And they immediately sits down, and of course he has the raw steak. At which point Toby does wonder if it's okay to serve it like that. But Dukesy starts to say, yeah, it's fine. Like, which he points out that it's probably okay to eat it raw. But it's at this point where Claire immediately devours her entire steak in under a minute. Like, she immediately grabs the steak, horfs it down, and in a matter of seconds. And all four other people who were there just stare at her and are very confused as to what's going on. Of course, this is this point where Dukesy points out if Claire's okay, but Morgana just curtly asks him to leave. So he does, and he has no idea, even though he has no idea what's going on. But and of course they proceed to immediately get up, and Toby and Darci are obviously very visibly confused as to what the hell just happened. They're on their way to the theater to watch the movie that Toby picked out for them, and they're talking about how it was weird that Claire just devoured this entire raw steak in a matter of seconds, which of course is very odd. But of course eventually Toby and Darci do wind up taking each other's hand, and they wind up walking to the movie theater. Jim, of course, tries to do this, only for Claire to then proceed to go and pick her teeth. Morgana to go and pick Claire's teeth, before realizing that that was rude, and pretending to be nice to Jim by holding his hand, which of course causes Jim to be increasingly confused. He has no idea what's going on, but of course, it's at this point where also a cat hisses at Claire, with Morgana controlling her, and Morgana hisses back at the cat. Like, it's very fun. It's a very funny scene, but it's becoming increasingly obvious that Claire is not Claire. Like, and Jim is taking a long time to figure this out. At which point Jim wonders if she's okay, and Claire insists that Jim take her home, and of course, Jim is obviously confused. He has no idea what's going on. He proceeds to just take her hand, and she drags him back to her house, which of course Jim has no idea. But Darci and Toby do like the idea, because obviously the date is weird. The date is weirding them out. They have no idea what to do with Claire, because she's being possessed by a witch, and she's being possessed by a sorceress, and obviously things are getting weird. So, of course, Jim is escorted back to her house. Also, something I forgot to bring up is that, and I don't really know where else to fit it because it's just in here. But while all of this is happening, there's another third thread that's going on, which is that as Jim is on his date with Claire and is currently out of the house, Walt proceeds to come to Jim's house and knocks on the door. Barbara eventually comes to the door and pointing out that she's painting and that she'll be up in a minute. And is surprised and a little bit angry to see Strickler there. Of course, Strickler immediately immediately points out that he doesn't know what came over him, but admits that he just had an urge to come see her. Which, of course, she tries to slam the door in his face, and, of course, he proceeds to try to explain himself about how he knows he took off suddenly and unexpectedly without a word, and admits that he knows he hurt her, but he wants to try and make up for it. She, of course, doesn't listen to him and just slams the door in his face, and he's dejected, of course. He like literally in his face, but he's dejected, gets back to his car and leaves. With Barbara realizing to herself, "Oh my God, he came back!" Like that was something that no guy in her life at that point had ever done. Like her dad, like Jim's dad. He took off without a word. Nobody knows where he is. He never came back. He's in Vermont somewhere. But Strickler eventually came back and tried to apologize. And she's obviously angry with him, but then realized he actually came back. He actually tried to apologize. Maybe I was wrong about him. But ultimately, Jim is returned. In any case, while all this is happening, Jim is brought to Claire's house by Morgana in Claire's body. He has not caught on about the idea about the fact that his girlfriend is being possessed by a sorceress. So she proceeds to go upstairs and that she'll be down in a minute, quote unquote. At which point, Jim proceeds to go on the TV and tries to find another movie, and eventually discovers that the movie that's currently on is the prequel to the movie that Darci and Toby went to go see in theaters. And realizing he can still salvage his date, he immediately puts the movie on and immediately gets invested in it. But of course, unbeknownst to him, Claire is currently Claire's being as possessed by Morgana. Morgana goes upstairs, retrieves her staff, and having made it up as an excuse that she couldn't take it with her previously, but also referred to as her Scathroon, which is apparently its proper name. We find that out in this episode that the Scathroon is the staff's proper name. But of course, once she has her staff, Jim is currently invested in the movie, but ironically enough, he's pointing out the part of the movie where the guy isn't turning around and noticing the horrible thing behind him. At which point, Jim, ironically enough, is paying too much attention to the movie to notice the horrible thing behind him, namely his girlfriend sneaking up behind him with her staff and trying to stab him. He of course jumps back once there's jump scare in the movie, which causes Morgana to narrowly miss him, and he is, of course, completely confused as to what's going on. At which point Morgana proclaims that she's trying to kill him, and of course they immediately start to get into a battle. But of course Jim has no idea what's going on, pointing out that he thought the date went well and doesn't want to know why Claire is attacking him. At which point Morgana stops putting up an accent and proceeds to reveal who she really is. She then proceeds to become increasingly annoyed with Jim when he doesn't know who she is. He visibly has no idea who Morgana is or anything else, even though she's being set up as the big bad of the series. Jim has no idea who Morgana is. That's established in this episode. But of course, frustrated, she then proceeds to attack Jim again, but Jim just starts throwing pillows at her, much to her annoyance, because Jim points out that he doesn't want to attack Claire. But of course, angry about the fact that she's being pegged with pillows, she then proceeds to use the Scathroon to create a massive portal that just sucks everything in around it. And of course, Jim immediately points out that if Claire's in there somewhere, that he did not mess up her house again. At which point he summons his armor and starts trying to fight Morgana. Not lethally kill her or anything, just hold her off long enough for help that he can knock her out or something. And of course, he does slowly start to do this and tries to get Claire to fight back, but Morgana insists that there is no Claire. Claire is gone. But of course, she immediately eventually is able to knock him into the portal after a whole bunch of other things start sliding in. And this, of course, causes Jim to... And of course, Jim is trying his best to hold on. But, of course, he once again tries to plead to Claire, but Morgana once again insists that Claire isn't here. At which point, Non-Enrique appears saying that no, she's not, but her brother is. At which point, he knocks the Morgana-possessed Claire out with a frying pan. and Jim narrowly escapes the portal as it's closing. Of course, they have no idea what's going on. They point out that Claire has been knocked out. She's obviously being attacked and is currently being and of course they proceed to wonder who Morgana is. And not Enrique responds that it's somebody he doesn't want to date. But ultimately, that's where the episode ends. But there is one last thing here that I want to talk about, where after Arg saves Dictatious, he immediately tries to sneak Dictatious out of the house and out of the place. And of course, one of the first things that Gunmar immediately brings up is, why did Dictatious call to Ursurna in his hour of need? Wondering if they're planning something. And of course, Ursurna insists that it must have been some sort of pathetic attempt to save his life, even though she knows full well what happened. She just turned on Dictatious because she sucks. But of course, pointing out that is people have patrolled the entire tower, the entire place, top to bottom. Pointing out that Arg doesn't seem to be anywhere. Arg and Dictatious don't seem to be anywhere. So, but with the knowledge that they're gone, or that they might be long gone, Gunmar points out that he has far more important matters to attend to. At which point he goes into the Heartstone and pulls out Angorot's head, pointing out that he will be reborn. At which point he breaks the head open to reveal Angorot's only remaining good eye. It's established to still be alive and in working order. So he immediately grabs it, and of course we find out that Arg had actually snuck into the Heartstone. He sees all of this with Dictatious, and he immediately runs out and sneaks out once Gunmar is inside and unable to see him. But ultimately Gunmar proceeds to Arg and Dictatious eventually make their way to the steps of Troll Market, where they're supposed to trying to escape. And of course, Dictatious wonders why Arg saved him, and Arg explains that he is able to use big words and speak eloquently, while Arg is not. Case in point, he speaks in very short, choppy sentences while Arg to Dictatious, and tells him to get out and warn Blinky about Angorot, while he distracts the guards and gives Dictatious a chance to escape. And of course, Dictatious immediately uses the stairs to climb up once Arg provides an distraction. And eventually Gunmar does discover where Arg is and insists that he can't escape. At which point he sends But of course, it's at this point where he sends Droll after Arg, and Arg climbs up into the dungeons. He tries to escape through the dungeons, and Gunmar possessed Droll, controlled Droll, then proceeds to tell Gunmar tell Arg that he can't escape, pointing out that the Pale Lady has big plans for him and that he needs him alive. And of course, Arg eventually is able to trap the possessed Droll inside a cage, and makes to escape until Gunmar comes in shortly after and presses the button to lower the chain that Arg is on, and he's unable to escape. He just falls down and is immediately caught and arrested by Gunmar's army, and tells everybody that he needs him alive because he's got big plans for him. So yeah, this episode's obviously a big one. Like, this episode, first and foremost, establishes that Claire and Morgana is obviously, now Jim knows that Morgana is an enemy that he needs to deal with, and obviously she's important. She's gonna be important, and also she's the one orchestrating the Eternal Nights for her escape. That's established in this episode as well. Also, Strickler comes back and tries to apologize to Barbara, who may or may not be trying to return the sentiment and trying to make it work again, but because she obviously realizes that he came back. And then that's essentially what happens. Claire gets possessed by Morgana, tries to kill Jim, and is also trying to orchestrate the Eternal Night so that she can get free again. So, that's a lot of things that happen in this episode, but ultimately that's what it boils down to. And it's a fun episode. It does starts to set up Morgana as a villain, because she hasn't had a major role up until this point. She's been in a couple of scenes, but she hasn't been super important. This is like her big major role where she possesses Claire and takes her over her body. And it's a big episode, but it is one that I like. But in case, that is going to do it for today's review. Yeah, I'm looking forward to explaining Morgana a bit more to you, because she's a fun villain, and she has a bit more of an arc going forward that we'll discuss. But well, it doesn't happen right away, but we'll get to that. But yeah, this episode is fun. It explores a lot of that. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. Anyway, thank you. And also be sure to go and check out my Discord. We hang out there sometimes. Check out my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays. Please go check that out. Go check out my Patreon if you want to help support me. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this video. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both those videos out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!